Who poisoned the headlines with lies? Who turned hotel rooms, yachts, and bedrooms into crime scenes? And who paid the price when the truth never matched the gossip? Fatty Arbuckle's scandalous trial. In 1921, Hollywood's top comedian signed a $1 million deal with Paramount, a fortune at the time. That same year, he hosted a lavish party at San Francisco's Street Francis Hotel. Hours later, a young actress collapsed, and days later, she was dead. Room 1219 became the center of a scandal so explosive it nearly shut Hollywood down. During the party, actress Virginia Rappe collapsed. She was taken to another room, and several guests later testified she was in visible pain. 4 days later, she died of peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder. From that moment, gossip papers exploded. Headlines accused Arbuckle of assault, drunken excess, and worse. The word monster was splashed across front pages before a single fact was confirmed. Arbuckle was arrested and charged with manslaughter. Studios panicked. Paramount pulled his films from theaters. Reporters made him the symbol of Hollywood's worst vices: booze, wild parties, and moral collapse. Preachers demanded the movie industry be censored or even shut down. The trials that followed were a circus. The prosecution pushed a story of violence and abuse. Friends of Rappe contradicted each other on the stand. Doctors disagreed on whether her injuries came from Arbuckle or from a long-standing medical condition. Meanwhile, the press printed every rumor it could find. Some claimed champagne bottles were involved. Others said witnesses were paid off. Most of these stories were never proven, but they sold papers by the millions. The first two trials ended in hung juries. By the third, the defense managed to dismantle the accusations point by point. In April 1922, Arbuckle was acquitted. The jury went further, issuing a rare written apology. "Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done." But the apology came too late. His reputation was ruined. Though he directed under pseudonyms later in the decade, Arbuckle never returned to his former fame. He died in 1933 at just 46, remembered less for his films than for the scandal that destroyed him. Clara Bow's tabloid hell. By the late 1920s, Hollywood had crowned its first true it girl. Clara Bow had the looks, the charisma, and the energy that defined the Jazz Age. She wasn't polished like some of her peers, but that raw, streetwise charm made her the top box office draw of the silent era. With success, however, came relentless gossip. Scandal sheets and whisper columns couldn't get enough of her. One rumor claimed she had slept with an entire college football team. Another alleged she threw wild, drunken parties where anything could happen. Stories also circulated that she mistreated staff, stealing from them or humiliating them in front of guests. Few of these stories were ever proven, but they were repeated until they became part of her public image. Bow's background made her an easy target. She came from poverty in Brooklyn, with no elite family name or social standing to protect her. Critics saw her as a working-class intruder in a world of glamour. Instead of celebrating her talent, many in the industry whispered that she was too crude, too unrefined, and too wild to be respected. The gossip press at the time thrived on sensationalism. Confidential-style magazines ran headlines that blurred fact and fiction. Stories about Bow sold copies, and publishers knew it. By the end of the decade, the line between her actual life and the tabloid version was almost impossible to separate. There were also rumors pushed by rivals inside Hollywood. Co-stars who resented her fame leaked stories. Studio insiders fed gossip columnists details from sets, whether true or not. Even old acquaintances from Brooklyn tried to cash in, selling tales about her youth that portrayed her as unstable or promiscuous. Bow herself struggled under the pressure. The endless stream of scandal damaged her reputation with producers and audiences alike. By the early 1930s, as sound films replaced silent pictures, her career was already in steep decline. She retired from movies at just 28, long before she should have. The Valentino Pink Powder Puff. In 1926, The Chicago Tribune published an editorial mocking the idea of men using cosmetics. Buried in the piece was a swipe at Hollywood's leading heartthrob, calling him a pink powder puff. The insult was clear. Rudolph Valentino, the silver screen's great lover, was being branded effeminate. Valentino had built his career on a new kind of masculinity. Films like The Sheik and Blood and Sand made him an icon of romance. Women lined up outside theaters to swoon over him, while men often bristled at his image. The editorial touched a nerve already present in the culture. Was America's most famous lover too soft, too foreign, or too unmanly for the role he played? The actor didn't take the insult quietly. Reports at the time said he considered challenging the writer to a boxing match. He publicly demanded that the journalist reveal his identity and defend the words face to face. The writer never stepped forward. For Valentino, it became another battle in a career where his personal identity was constantly under attack. Hollywood gossip made matters worse. Rumors swirled about his sexuality, his marriages, and whether he could live up to the virile image crafted on screen. He was accused of being controlled by domineering women. He was called vain, weak, and out of touch with real American masculinity. None of it was proven, but the whispers followed him wherever he went. Later that same year, Valentino collapsed in New York. Doctors diagnosed a ruptured ulcer that turned into peritonitis. Within days, he was gone at only 31 years old. News of his death sparked chaos. Crowds of fans gathered outside the hospital, and riots broke out during his funeral in Manhattan. His death didn't silence the gossip. If anything, it gave it fuel. Some claimed the constant attacks on his masculinity broke him down. Others said he had been cursed by the very image that made him famous. The pink powder puff insult became one of the most quoted pieces of gossip from the silent era, showing how a single phrase could cut through a legend. Marion Davies and Hearst parties. A private yacht on the California coast filled with Hollywood stars, moguls, and enough champagne to drown prohibition. In 1924, that floating party ended in tragedy when film producer Thomas Ince suddenly fell ill and later died. The official cause was heart failure. The gossip, however, pointed straight at media tycoon William Randolph Hearst and his mistress, actress Marion Davies. Hearst controlled much of the American press and was fiercely protective of Davies. He poured his fortune into promoting her career, even when critics doubted her acting skills. At the same time, rumors linked her to other men, including Charlie Chaplin. The yacht gathering brought all three together: Hearst, Davies, and Chaplin. When Ince left the yacht in distress and died shortly after, the story was too juicy for tabloids to resist. Reporters published whispers that Hearst, jealous of Chaplin, had confronted him with a gun. According to the rumors, Ince stepped into the line of fire and was fatally shot by mistake. None of this was ever confirmed, but the story spread like wildfire. Hearst, of course, had the power to shape headlines. His own newspapers printed only the official version, indigestion and heart failure. Other outlets, outside his control, leaned into the scandal. Hollywood insiders traded the tale in hushed tones. Chaplin denied any involvement. Davies stayed loyal to Hearst, avoiding public comment. For many, the lack of clear answers only made the whispers louder. The incident quickly earned a nickname, the Murder on the Oneida, after the yacht's name. For Ince, the timing was tragic. He had been a pioneer of film production, running his own studio and shaping the business side of Hollywood. Instead of being remembered for that legacy, his name became forever tied to the mystery of Hearst's yacht. Over the years, the story has resurfaced again and again. Books, documentaries, and even a film, The Cat's Meow, revived the rumor of a jealous Hearst, a gun, and a cover-up. Historians point out there's no hard evidence of foul play. Still, the mix of power, secrecy, and media control makes it one of Hollywood's most enduring scandals. What happened on the yacht may never be fully known. What is certain is how quickly gossip could eclipse fact in Golden Age Hollywood, leaving even a titan like Hearst unable to silence the rumor mill entirely. Jean Harlow's Cursed Life. In September 1932, studio workers discovered Paul Byrne, the husband of Jean Harlow, dead in their Beverly Hills home. He had a gunshot wound and a note that read, "Last night was only a comedy." Within hours, Hollywood's rumor mill had other explanations. Some whispered that Byrne had met with foul play. Others claimed Harlow found him with another woman and covered it up. Still, others said Byrne was being blackmailed and the note was staged. MGM executives rushed to control the story, sending studio fixers to the scene before police had even finished their investigation. The mix of secrecy and conflicting accounts turned a personal tragedy into one of Hollywood's most talked-about scandals. Jean Harlow herself was only 21 at the time, already one of the industry's brightest stars. She had broken through as the Platinum Blonde, with her striking look and sharp sense of humor making her a box office sensation, but the death of her husband cast a long shadow. Reporters painted her as unlucky in love, even cursed. Tabloids suggested she was somehow responsible, even though she was never accused of any wrongdoing. The scandal never really went away. Every detail of Byrne's death was dissected. Who found the body first? Why was there confusion about the time of death? Why did MGM executives arrive before police statements were finalized? Each question created new theories. The most popular rumor claimed Byrne's former lover confronted him and pulled the trigger herself. To this day, historians debate what really happened. Harlow's own life added to the sense of doom. Just 5 years later, in 1937, she collapsed on the set of Saratoga. She died shortly after from kidney failure at the age of 26. Fans refused to believe the official explanation. Theories of poisoning, untreated illness, or medical neglect swirled for years. Her early death cemented her image as Hollywood's doomed goddess. Errol Flynn's trial explodes. Hollywood swashbuckler on trial. In late 1942, newspapers ran that headline coast to coast. Errol Flynn, the dashing star of Captain Blood and the Adventures of Robin Hood, was accused of unlawful sexual conduct with 2 minors. It became the biggest celebrity courtroom drama of the decade. The charges came from Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterlee, both teenagers. They testified that Flynn lured them with promises of Hollywood glamour, then assaulted them. The details splashed across front pages, feeding the image of Flynn as reckless, hard-drinking, and dangerous off-screen. Flynn denied everything, but his reputation was already stained. Reporters nicknamed the proceedings the trial of the century. His fan base, especially young women, camped outside the courthouse. Supporters wore buttons reading, "I am with Flynn." Others called for him to be banned from film altogether. Inside the courtroom, the case was shaky. Witness testimony conflicted. One accuser admitted she had lied about her age on a passport application. Defense lawyers painted the girls as opportunists seeking money and publicity. Flynn's team pushed the narrative that he was a victim of blackmail. The jury deliberated for only 12 hours before acquitting him on all charges in early 1943. Flynn walked free, but the scandal never left him. Even in victory, the trial cemented his reputation as Hollywood's bad boy. Gossip columns described his wolfish appetite for women and alcohol. Stories of wild parties, heavy drinking, and affairs with barely legal partners grew more believable after the case. The phrase, "in like Flynn," became a common expression in the 1940s, tied directly to his image as a man who could seduce anyone. Though he continued making films, studios watched him more closely. He remained a star, but the shine of Robin Hood's heroism was forever mixed with the shadow of scandal. By the time he died in 1959, Flynn's personal life was still the subject of gossip. Multiple marriages, affairs, financial trouble, and rumors of underage relationships kept his name in the press as often as his films did. Carol Landis's mysterious death. On the morning of the 5th of July, 1948, actress Carol Landis was found unresponsive in her Brentwood home. Beside her lay empty pill bottles and a note addressed to her mother. The man who discovered her was Rex Harrison, a married actor with whom she had been romantically involved. By that afternoon, the headlines were everywhere. The official cause of death was an overdose of barbiturates, but the circumstances left the public asking questions. Why had Harrison waited hours before calling the police? Why did details in the note never fully match the official story? And why did studio publicists arrive at the house so quickly, even before investigators finished their work? Rumors spread instantly. Some claimed Harrison had staged the scene to protect his career. Others whispered that the suicide note had been altered, or that another message had been destroyed. The more the story was managed by Hollywood insiders, the less people believed the official version. Landis had been a rising star in the 1940s, known for films like Topper Returns and 1 Million BC. She entertained troops during World War II, earning the nickname the Blonde Bomber. Behind the glamour, though, she struggled with depression, failed marriages, and the pressures of a studio system that offered little sympathy for fading stars. By 1948, her career was stalling. The scandal intensified because of Harrison's involvement. He was married to actress Lily Palmer at the time, and gossip columnists seized on the love triangle. Stories hinted that Landis had demanded Harrison leave his wife, and that when he refused, she gave up hope. While this narrative was never confirmed, it was printed in papers across the country and stuck to her legacy. For many fans, the unanswered questions overshadowed her achievements. Was she simply a victim of despair, or of Hollywood's ruthless disregard for women once their careers slowed? The rumors never went away. Carol Landis was only 29 years old. Her funeral drew Hollywood friends and co-stars, but it also drew critics who said the industry had abandoned her. Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato. On the 4th of April, 1958, Beverly Hills police were called to Lana Turner's home. Inside, they found gangster Johnny Stompanato fatally stabbed. Standing nearby was Turner's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane. Within hours, the story dominated front pages across the country. The official account was shocking enough. Turner had been arguing with Stompanato in her bedroom when the fight turned violent. Cheryl, hearing the commotion, grabbed a kitchen knife and rushed in. In the struggle that followed, she plunged it into Stompanato, killing him instantly. Investigators later ruled it justifiable homicide, concluding the teenager acted to protect her mother. But the gossip didn't stop there. Rumors claimed Turner herself had wielded the knife and staged the scene to protect her daughter. Others whispered about a cover-up, suggesting powerful studio figures pressured authorities to shield Turner's career. Whether true or not, these whispers stuck, feeding a narrative that Hollywood had once again bent the rules for one of its stars. Stompanato's reputation only made the story larger. He was a known associate of gangster Mickey Cohen and had a history of violence toward women. Friends of Turner testified about his jealousy, possessiveness, and threats. Columnists painted him as a dangerous man who had wormed his way into Hollywood society. For the public, the idea of a glamorous star caught in a love affair with a mobster was irresistible. The press milked every angle. Courtroom sketches of Turner testifying in tears were printed nationwide. Fans debated whether her emotions were genuine or staged. Cheryl, meanwhile, became a tragic figure, a teenager forced into the spotlight after an act of desperation. For Turner, the scandal was both a curse and a twisted boost. While many critics condemned her, others saw her as a victim of abuse who had narrowly escaped with her life. Studios capitalized on the attention, and Turner soon won acclaim for Imitation of Life the following year. Still, the shadow of Stompanato's death followed her for the rest of her career. Rock Hudson's secret life. In 1955, Scandal magazine Confidential threatened to run a story that could have ended Rock Hudson's career. The editors had uncovered details about his relationships with men and hinted at explosive secrets behind Hollywood's most eligible bachelor. In an era when homosexuality could destroy a career overnight, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Hudson was at the peak of his fame. He had risen from bit parts to starring roles in Magnificent Obsession and Giant. Women adored him, and studios marketed him as the ultimate romantic lead. A single article suggesting he was gay risked millions of dollars in box office sales. To prevent exposure, Hudson's agent Henry Wilson cut a deal with Confidential, Instead of outing Hudson, the magazine ran pieces about lesser-known stars from Wilson's client list. The trade protected Hudson but confirmed what insiders already knew. The studios were actively staging cover-ups to protect their investments. Hudson's public image was carefully managed. The studio arranged high-profile dates with actresses. In 1955, he entered into a short-lived marriage with Phyllis Gates, Wilson's secretary. Many saw it as a lavender marriage designed to silence rumors. The union lasted barely 3 years, and once it ended, whispers returned even louder. Despite the studio's efforts, Hollywood gossip circles knew the truth. Parties in Los Angeles often included whispered conversations about Hudson's private life. Tabloid reporters hinted without ever saying outright. The tension between his public persona and private reality was one of Hollywood's worst-kept secrets. For Hudson himself, the pressure was enormous. Friends later recalled the fear he lived with daily, worried that a slip-up or betrayal could destroy everything he had built. Yet, on screen, he remained America's favorite leading man, playing opposite Doris Day in breezy romantic comedies that reinforced his heterosexual image. The lengths taken to hide Hudson's sexuality revealed how tightly Hollywood controlled its stars. While the official record during the 1950s and 60 showed a handsome, masculine heartthrob, the reality was much more complex. By the end of the Golden Age, Hudson had survived exposure, but at the cost of living under constant rumor. His secret remained hidden from the public for decades, proof of how far Hollywood would go to protect its own myth. Alfred Hitchcock's cruel obsessions. On the set of The Birds in 1963, Tippi Hedren was told she would film a simple sequence using mechanical props. Instead, live gulls and ravens were hurled at her, their beaks and claws tearing at her skin as cameras rolled. The shoot went on for days. Hedren later recalled breaking down in tears, convinced Hitchcock had staged the ordeal deliberately. Stories like this circulated in Hollywood long before they were confirmed. Hitchcock was a genius director, but whispers about his obsession with leading ladies spread through studios. Crew members noticed his fixation on Hedren, just as earlier co-stars like Grace Kelly and Ingrid Bergman had drawn his attention. The difference with Hedren was how far he seemed willing to go. By the mid-1960s, gossip around Hitchcock's behavior was an open secret. Assistants described him monitoring Hedren's movements and isolating her on set. She claimed he made advances, and when she resisted, he punished her with cruel working conditions. At the time, these stories were traded in hushed tones. Hollywood had little interest in exposing a director who made profitable films. Fans only saw the results on screen. Hitchcock's icy blondes became iconic. Their controlled beauty contrasted with scenes of chaos, terror, and danger. Behind the camera, colleagues whispered about whether his creative choices were also personal fixations. Hedren herself later said that after she refused him, he blocked her career opportunities, leaving her trapped by a contract she couldn't break. The rumors weren't limited to The Birds. On Marnie, Hedren's next film with him, Hitchcock's controlling behavior continued. Gossip columnists didn't print the worst details at the time, but insiders knew her struggles. The fact that Hitchcock remained untouchable in the industry only fueled the whispers. Decades later, Hedren went public with her account, confirming what many had long suspected. Hitchcock's harassment had been real, and the bird attack scene was no accident. Biographers added weight to the claims, pointing to patterns of obsessive behavior throughout his career. The gossip of the 1960s, once dismissed as rumor, had been rooted in truth all along. In 1921, a young actress named Virginia Rapp died under mysterious circumstances at a party hosted by silent film star Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. This controversy was just the beginning. For over a century, Hollywood has been a breeding ground for disturbing rumors that turned out to be all too real. Today we're pulling back the curtain on Tinseltown's darkest truths. The casting couch, early Hollywood's open secret. The term casting couch emerged in the 1920s, referring to a troubling practice where influential men took advantage of aspiring actors for inappropriate favors in exchange for roles. Louis B. Mayer, co-founder of MGM Studios, was notorious for this behavior. Mayer held private meetings with young actresses, often leading to uncomfortable situations. In 1935, dancer Patricia Douglas attended an MGM party where she was reportedly a victim of misconduct by a studio salesman. Despite filing charges, the case was quickly buried. Joan Crawford, who started her career in the 1920s, spoke about her experiences years later. "I never slept with a man I didn't want to. No one ever made me do anything I didn't want to do." However, her words hinted at the pressures faced by many actresses. Marilyn Monroe once said, "Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul." This quote reflects the industry's moral bankruptcy. In 1937, child star Shirley Temple, then 9 years old, was inappropriately approached by MGM producer Arthur Freed. When she laughed at him, Freed reportedly exposed himself. Temple's mother quickly removed her from the situation. The silent film era saw its share of scandals too. The Fatty Arbuckle case in 1921 shocked the nation when actress Virginia Rappe died after a party at his hotel. Though Arbuckle was eventually acquitted, the incident shed light on Hollywood's darker side. By the 1930s, the Hays Code was introduced to clean up Hollywood's image. However, behind closed doors, the exploitation continued. Judy Garland's studio-enforced diet pills. Her road to stardom was paved with studio control and dangerous health practices. MGM signed Garland at 13 in 1935. From the start, studio head Louis B. Mayer criticized her weight, calling her "my little hunchback." By 1938, during the filming of Love Finds Andy Hardy, 16-year-old Garland was put on a strict diet. Studio doctors prescribed Benzedrine and amphetamine for weight loss and seconal barbiturate to help her sleep. This dangerous cocktail kick-started a lifelong struggle with addiction. Garland's daily meal often consisted of just soup, black coffee, and 80 cigarettes, along with the prescribed pills. During the filming of The Wizard of Oz in 1939, the studio wanted her to lose more weight. She was 17 and weighed 94 pounds. In 1943, while filming Girl Crazy, Garland collapsed on set multiple times due to exhaustion and malnutrition. The studio's response was to give her a brief rest before pushing her back to work. Garland later recalled, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills." By 1947, Garland's health had deteriorated significantly. She attempted to end herself on the set of The Pirate. Despite this, MGM continued to push her, leading to her suspension in 1948 due to erratic behavior caused by addiction. "I was in the studio system for 15 years and I thought they were going to kill me," Garland said in a 1967 interview. She suffered numerous breakdowns and was admitted to sanitariums multiple times throughout her career. The long-term effects of this studio-enforced regimen were devastating. Garland struggled with addiction and health issues for the rest of her life. She died in 1969 at age 47 from an accidental overdose, a tragic end tied directly to the abusive practices she endured in her youth. Alfred Hitchcock's obsession with Tippi Hedren. His obsession with Tippi Hedren during the early 1960s revealed a dark side to the famed director. Hedren, a model-turned-actress, was discovered by Hitchcock in a TV commercial in 1961. He immediately signed her to a 7-year contract. Hedren's first role was in The Birds, 1963. During filming, Hitchcock's behavior became increasingly controlling. He dictated her wardrobe off-set and forbade her from socializing with the cast and crew. Hedren later stated, "Every time I'd be talking with a male member of the cast or crew, my next exchange with Hitchcock would be icy." The most harrowing incident occurred during the filming of the attic scene. Hedren was told mechanical birds would be used. Instead, live birds were thrown at her for 5 days straight. She suffered cuts, exhaustion, and a nervous breakdown. When a bird nearly pecked her eye, she snapped, "I think you got your scene, Mr. Hitchcock." In 1964, during the production of Marnie, Hitchcock's obsession intensified. He had a mask of Hedren's face made for his personal use and installed a secret door between his office and her dressing room. Hedren recounted a disturbing incident in her trailer. "He touched me inappropriately. It was uncomfortable and deeply unsettling. The harder I fought him, the more aggressive he became." After Hedren refused his advances, Hitchcock threatened to ruin her career. True to his word, he kept her under contract for 2 years without work, effectively stalling her career. Hitchcock's behavior wasn't limited to Hedren. Actress Diane Baker, who co-starred in Marnie, observed, "I saw Hitchcock verbally abuse Tippy and I was shocked." In 1966, Hedren finally broke free from her contract with Hitchcock. However, the director's influence in Hollywood made it difficult for her to find work. She later said, "He ruined my career, but he didn't ruin my life." Hedren kept silent about these experiences for decades, only speaking out in detail in her 2016 memoir, Tippy. Her story shed light on the abuse of power that was all too common in Hollywood during that era. Roman Polanski's assault case. On March 10, 1977, film director Roman Polanski, then 43, was arrested in Los Angeles. The charge, drugging and misconduct of a 13-year-old girl, Samantha Gailey, now Guymer. The incident occurred at actor Jack Nicholson's home during a photo shoot for French Vogue. According to court documents, Polanski gave Gailey champagne and part of a Quaalude. He then allegedly continued with inappropriate actions despite her objections. Gailey later testified, "I was mostly just on and off saying, 'No, stop,' but I was afraid." Polanski faced legal charges on multiple counts related to inappropriate conduct, including allegations involving the use of a controlled substance and misconduct with a minor. He initially pleaded not guilty to all charges, but later accepted a plea bargain. On August 8, 1977, Polanski pleaded guilty to unlawful activity with a minor. Per the plea deal, the probation report recommended probation. However, on the day of sentencing, February 1, 1978, Polanski fled to France. He had learned that the judge, Lawrence J. Rittenband, planned to sentence him to prison and subsequent deportation. France refused to extradite Polanski due to its limited extradition treaty with the U.S. Polanski continued his film career in Europe, even winning an Oscar for The Pianist in 2003, which he couldn't collect in person. In 2009, Polanski was arrested in Switzerland at the request of U.S. authorities. He spent 67 days in custody before being released and returning to France. Guymer, the victim, has since stated she forgives Polanski and believes the case should be dropped. In a 2013 interview, she said, "I'm not going to carry a bunch of resentment, and much worse things happen to people." Despite this, attempts to resolve the case have been unsuccessful. In 2017, Polanski's offer to return to the U.S. for time served was rejected by L.A. County Superior Court Judge Scott Gordon. As of 2024, Polanski remains a fugitive from the U.S. justice system. Rob Lowe's tape scandal. In July 1988, 24-year-old actor Rob Lowe became embroiled in a controversy that nearly derailed his career. The incident occurred during the Democratic National Convention in Atlanta, where Lowe was supporting presidential candidate Michael Dukakis. On the night of July 17th, Lowe met 2 young women at a bar and brought them back to his hotel room. Unbeknownst to Lowe, one of the women, 16-year-old Jan Parsons, was underage. The encounter was videotaped, creating what would become one of Hollywood's first celebrity intimacy tape controversies. The tape surfaced months later when Parsons' mother found it and reported it to the authorities. On February 24, 1989, the story broke in the media, causing immediate shockwaves in Hollywood and beyond. Lowe initially denied any wrongdoing, claiming he didn't know Parsons was underage. He stated, "I didn't ask for ID going into a club. It was Atlanta, the home of Coca-Cola, not the home of underage girls." The controversy had severe consequences for Lowe's career. He was dropped from several film projects and lost numerous endorsement deals. His appearance at the 1989 Academy Awards was met with open hostility from some attendees. Legal ramifications followed. Lowe faced criminal charges for misconduct with a minor and distributing explicit material. To avoid prosecution, he agreed to perform 20 hours of community service in his home state of Ohio. The incident also led to a civil lawsuit from Parsons' family, which was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. As part of the settlement, Lowe was required to publicly apologize. In the years following the scandal, Lowe worked to rebuild his career and reputation. He entered rehab for alcohol addiction in 1990, a move he credits with helping him turn his life around. Woody Allen's relationship with Soon-Yi Previn. In January 1992, Mia Farrow discovered unclothed photos of her adopted daughter, Soon-Yi Previn, in Woody Allen's apartment. Allen, then 56, had been in a relationship with Farrow for 12 years. Soon-Yi was 21 at the time and had been adopted by Farrow and her ex-husband, Andre Previn, years earlier. The discovery sent shockwaves through Hollywood and the public. Allen confirmed the relationship in August 1992, stating, "I'm thrilled." The admission came amid a bitter custody battle between Allen and Farrow over their 3 children. Allen's film, Husbands and Wives, released in September 1992, became unintentionally controversial due to its plot similarities to the real-life scandal. The film's premiere was marked by protests and media frenzy. In 1993, a judge in the custody case called Allen's behavior with Soon-Yi grossly inappropriate. The court denied Allen visitation rights with his daughter Dylan and limited contact with his son Satchel, now Ronan Farrow. Despite the controversy, Allen and Soon-Yi married in Venice on December 23, 1997. Allen was 62, Soon-Yi 27. The ceremony was small, with only a handful of guests present. In a rare 2015 interview with NPR, Allen addressed the relationship's beginnings. "I was paternal. She responded to someone paternal." This statement further fueled critics who found the relationship's power dynamics disturbing. The scandal significantly impacted Allen's career. Several actors, including Greta Gerwig and Timothée Chalamet, later expressed regret for working with him. Amazon Studios terminated a 4-picture deal with Allen in 2019, citing renewed allegations of misconduct by Dylan Farrow. As of 2024, Allen and Soon-Yi remain married and have 2 adopted daughters. The controversy continues to spark debates about power, consent, and morality in Hollywood relationships. R. Kelly's illegal marriage to Aaliyah. On August 31, 1994, R&B singer R. Kelly, then 27, illegally married his 15-year-old protégée Aaliyah in a secret ceremony in Rosemont, Illinois. The marriage certificate falsely listed Aaliyah's age as 18. Kelly had met Aaliyah 3 years earlier when she was 12. He became her mentor, producer, and lead songwriter for her debut album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, released in May 1994. The album's title now seems disturbingly prophetic. Vibe magazine published a copy of the marriage certificate in December 1994. The revelation sparked immediate controversy. Aaliyah's family was reportedly furious and moved quickly to have the marriage annulled in February 1995. Kelly's former tour manager, Demetrius Smith, later admitted to obtaining a fake ID for Aaliyah. In the 2019 documentary Surviving R. Kelly, Smith stated, "I was in the room when they got married. I'm not proud of that." Both Kelly and Aaliyah initially denied the marriage. In a 1994 interview, Aaliyah said, "I'm not married. That's all there is to it." She maintained this stance until she died in a plane crash in 2001. The illegal marriage came to light again during Kelly's 2019 arrest on federal charges. Prosecutors alleged Kelly bribed a government official in Illinois to create a fake ID for Aaliyah. In 2021, during Kelly's exploitation trial, a witness testified that Kelly married Aaliyah because he believed she was pregnant with his child. The marriage would have protected Kelly from charges. Kelly was ultimately convicted on all 9 counts against him, including racketeering and exploitation. The illegal marriage to Aaliyah was a key part of the prosecution's case. Harvey Weinstein's decades of serious misconduct. On October 5, 2017, the New York Times published an exposé detailing nearly 3 decades of coercion allegations against Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. The article by Jodi Kantor and Megan Toohey cited interviews with numerous women in the film industry. Among the first accusers were actress Ashley Judd and former Weinstein employee Laura Madden. Judd recounted a 1997 incident where Weinstein invited her to his hotel room and asked for a massage. Madden described similar experiences in the early 1990s. The article revealed that Weinstein had reached at least 8 settlements with women who accused him of unwanted physical contact and advances. These settlements, dating back to 1990, were often accompanied by non-disclosure agreements. 5 days after the Times article, The New Yorker published Ronan Farrow's investigation, which included 13 more women's accounts of alleged abuse by Weinstein. 3 women accused Weinstein of SA. Actress Rose McGowan, who had alluded to her experience for years, publicly accused Weinstein of serious misconduct on October 12, 2017. She stated she was paid $100,000 in 1997 to sign a non-disclosure agreement. By October 31st, over 80 women had come forward with allegations against Weinstein. The list included high-profile actresses like Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie, and Salma Hayek. Weinstein was dismissed from the Weinstein Company on October 8, 2017. He was later arrested and charged in New York on May 25, 2018, for serious misconduct. On February 24, 2020, Weinstein was found guilty of 2 serious offenses and sentenced to 23 years in prison. Bill Cosby's serial assaults. For decades, Bill Cosby was known as America's dad, beloved for his role on The Cosby Show. However, beneath this wholesome image lurked a serial predator whose crimes spanned half a century. The first public accusation against Cosby came in 2005 when Andrea Constand filed a lawsuit alleging he drugged and acted inappropriately toward her in 2004. During the case, 13 other women came forward with similar stories. The suit was settled out of court in 2006 for $338 million. Despite these allegations, Cosby's career continued largely unaffected until October 16, 2014. During a stand-up performance in Philadelphia, comedian Hannibal Buress seriously referred to Cosby, rekindling public interest in the allegations against him. In the following months, dozens of women came forward with stories of coercion dating back to the 1960s. Many described a similar pattern. Cosby would offer them drinks, which were allegedly drugged, and then SA them while they were incapacitated. On December 30, 2015, Cosby was arrested and charged with 3 counts of aggravated indecent moves against Andrea Constand. This was the first criminal case against Cosby, as most other allegations fell outside the statute of limitations. Cosby's first trial in 2017 ended in a mistrial due to a hung jury. However, in a retrial on April 26, 2018, Cosby was found guilty on all 3 counts. On September 25, 2018, he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in state prison. During the trial, 5 other women testified about their experiences with Cosby, establishing a pattern of behavior. One of these women, Janice Dickinson, testified that Cosby coerced her in 1982 after giving her a pill. Cosby's conviction was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court on June 30, 2021, due to a violation of his due process rights. He was released from prison the same day, having served nearly 3 years. Kevin Spacey's predatory behavior. On October 29, 2017, actor Anthony Rapp alleged that Kevin Spacey made a misappropriate advance toward him in 1986, when Rapp was 14 and Spacey was 26. This accusation, published in a BuzzFeed article, marked the beginning of Spacey's downfall. Spacey responded on Twitter, claiming no memory of the incident, but offering an apology. In the same statement, he came out as gay, a move widely criticized as an attempt to deflect from the allegations. Following Rapp's accusation, numerous other men came forward with similar stories. On November 1, 2017, actor Roberto Cavazos alleged that Spacey groped him in the mid-2000s at the Old Vic Theatre in London, where Spacey was artistic director from 2004 to 2015. The Old Vic conducted an internal investigation revealing 20 personal testimonies of alleged inappropriate behavior by Spacey between 1995 and 2013. Many of these incidents occurred on the theater's premises. On November 3, 2017, Netflix cut all ties with Spacey, halting production on House of Cards and shelving his film Gore. Ridley Scott reshot Spacey's scenes in All the Money in the World, replacing him with Christopher Plummer just weeks before the film's release. In 2018, Spacey was charged with indecent conduct in Nantucket, Massachusetts, for allegedly groping an 18-year-old man in 2016. The case was later dropped when the accuser invoked his Fifth Amendment rights during a hearing about his missing phone. In May 2022, Spacey was charged with 4 counts of SA against 3 men in the UK, dating back to incidents between 2005 and 2013. In July 2023, Spacey was found not guilty of these charges in a UK court. Despite the court verdict, Spacey's career has been irreparably damaged. His last major film role was in 2018's Billionaire Boys Club, which earned only $618 on its opening day. While millions of people were engrossed in the incredible movies and shows produced by the industry, both in their homes and cinemas, they remained oblivious to the darkness lurking within. Beyond the glamour and talent that Hollywood exuded, there was an underworld that was very different from what was being shown in the media. From rumors of murders to the mistreatment of actors and numerous atrocities that remained buried and far away from the public eyes, Hollywood was proved to be a dark and chaotic place. Well, let's just say nothing is hidden under the sun, because some of these dark and disgusting things that happened in the industry have now been confirmed to be true. The horrific fake film shoot. Anyone who knew about the film studio MGM knew that they were notorious for their dark deeds and would do almost anything to make a scandal disappear, and in order to protect their own. They had the money, the power, and the fixers, but when a biographer, David Sten, began to investigate them, he uncovered some secrets that they kept buried for years. One of these was what happened to a 20-year-old dancer named Patricia Douglas at a 1937 MGM party. According to David Sten, MGM did everything in their power to suppress the scandal when it erupted. They even went as far as hiding evidence and doing all they could to silence the victim, but it seems like her innocence screamed louder than their efforts, and soon enough their deeds were brought to the light. Although MGM was successful at burying the story back in the 1930s, David Sten found some evidence that proved that Patricia's story was real. She wasn't the young wannabe star trying to take down a powerful studio. She was a young, vulnerable girl whose innocence was taken away at an MGM party. In the words of the biographer, I managed to find old newspaper coverage, previously unseen photos, damning studio documentation, long-forgotten legal records, privately shot cinematographic evidence hidden in an MGM film vault, and, most amazing, Patricia Douglas herself. After 65 years of silence, she was finally able to tell her side of the story. According to Patricia Douglas, that incident completely broke her and turned her life upside down. Before that day, she was living a normal life and was already a part of the entertainment industry. Her love for dancing opened her up to opportunities, and at the age of 15, she had already appeared in 2 classics. Her mother was doing well financially, so she didn't need to work. She only took on a few jobs because she enjoyed it and wanted to keep herself busy. This chestnut-haired lady with porcelain skin would later get a casting call on the 2nd of May, 1937 that changed her life. She had no idea that this call was not what she thought it was, and although she hesitated for a while, she finally said yes. Looking back on that day, Patricia regrets saying yes to that call. In her words, "They never mentioned it was for a party, ever. I wouldn't have gone. Oh God, I wouldn't have gone." Although she and hundreds of other girls were invited for this so-called shoot, they would soon discover that this was no film shoot. It was a party that Louis B. Mayer had, organized to celebrate his salesman for a job well done. But this was no ordinary party. It was going to an alcohol-fueled party where all manner of atrocities would happen. The studio had become the greatest studio in Hollywood, and they bagged distribution deals that will keep them on top for several years. This party as their way of celebrating. Patricia Douglas was one out of the 120 young female dancers that received the casting call. It will surprise you to know that a well-known casting director made these calls so the girls had no idea what was about to happen. They were supposed to be dressed in fitted cowgirl outfits, and as soon as they got to the studio, they were transported to an unknown location for this party. On getting there, Patricia saw over 300 men partying, smoking, and taking all kinds of substances. She didn't see cameras, a crew, or lights. Patricia immediately started to feel uncomfortable, as she had never had any sexual encounter before. She certainly didn't want to be in such a wild party. Sadly, there was no way any of the girls could escape. As the party went on, a particular salesman called David Rose began to admire Patricia. He pretended to want to teach her a dance step, and before she knew it, he and other friends held her down and poured liquor down her throat. Soon enough, Patricia began to feel sick, and when she went outside to get some air, David Ross dragged her to the parking lot and took advantage of her in one of the cars. Interestingly, a parking attendant witnessed the whole thing, but he later denied. Patricia did not keep quiet about what happened. She told her mother about it, and they were able to hire an attorney, but every legal step she took proved futile. No one believed her. One can only imagine how many other girls went through a similar experience that night. Patricia, the only person who was bold enough to speak up, was shut down and called a liar by MGM. With their connections, money, and power, they were able to shut the case down. Among the evidence that was later found was a letter from publisher William Randolph Hearst to Louis B. Mayer saying, "Shut this down. Make her stop." Do you realize how damaging this is to the whole movie picture industry? With the help of biographer David Sten, she was able to document what happened to her in the documentary titled Girl 27 before she passed on. The director with weird sexual preferences. After several decades of whining, dining, and having wild sexual encounters with celebrities, Scotty Bowers published a book titled Full Service: My Adventures in Hollywood and the Secret Sex Lives of the Stars. Bowers, who was said to have been a go-to guy for setting up all manner of trysts for some of Hollywood's most famous stars, decided to pen down all the escapes that these stars were involved in. While some of his celebrity clients were closeted gays and lesbian, other clients liked things that were weird and freaky. The revelations she made about Charles Laughton left everyone in shock. To the rest of the world, Charles Laughton was a brilliant director. He was a highly respected and influential figure in the film industry. Charles Laughton was an English stage and film actor as well as a director. Truth be told, his talent was recognized early in his career, and he gained fame for his versatility as an actor. He excelled in portraying a wide range of characters, from dramatic to comedic roles. Most people who were entertained by his works revered him. Some of his most notable performances include his portrayal of the hunchbacked bell ringer Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1939, Captain Bligh in Mutiny on the Bounty in 1935, and his chilling role as the tyrannical barrister in Witness for the Prosecution in 1957. Everyone saw him as a talented man who was laser-focused on his career, but no one knew the secrets he was keeping from the world. In addition to his acting prowess, Laughton also ventured into directing, where he demonstrated a keen eye for storytelling and visual composition. His directorial debut was with the film The Night of the Hunter in 1955, which has since been recognized as a classic of American cinema despite its initial commercial failure. Laughton's impact on the film industry was profound, and he was highly respected by his peers. Throughout his career, he received numerous accolades, including an Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in The Private Life of Henry VIII in 1933. Apparently, when he was achieving all these, he was busy behind closed doors doing things that would have shocked his fans. According to Bowers, Charles's secret sexual activities were very different from that of his celebrity friends. He said Charles was into scat proclivities. Bowers revealed that Charles liked it when his sexual partners released on him, and on some occasions, he spread these substances on a sandwich and ate it. Bowers didn't judge this act, as he was an open-minded person who believed that people should do whatever they wanted, and in his words, "The practice certainly didn't turn me on, but it was patently clear that it was regarded as a normal and acceptable part of sexual activity by its devotees, with Charles Laughton being one of them and Ty Power another. So who was I to judge? To each his own." Who would have thought that this talented man was involved in such sexual acts behind closed doors? Although there were already rumors about what he was involved in, Bauer's book confirmed the rumors and went into detail about what this celebrated director was doing behind closed doors. Charlie Chaplin and underage girls. He was a highly successful actor who was well respected in the industry. He was known to have inspired many other actors, but when rumors began to circulate about his preference in women, a lot of people lost respect for him. They simply couldn't believe it. Charlie Chaplin, a towering figure in the world of comedy, mesmerized audiences with his timeless humor and poignant performances on the silver screen. Yet, behind the laughter, his personal life was shrouded in controversy, particularly concerning his romantic entanglements. Soon enough, his secret preferences when it came to women became a subject of both fascination and scrutiny. Truth be told, Chaplin's predilection for marrying significantly younger women was evident throughout his life. His first marriage to 16-year-old Mildred Harris at the age of 29 set a pattern that would repeat itself. Despite the considerable age gap, Chaplin seemed drawn to youthful exuberance and innocence. However, his marriages were not devoid of tumult. Harris and Chaplin's union dissolved after 2 years. It would surprise you to know that he went on to date and marry yet another girl that was younger than him. The pattern persisted with Chaplin's subsequent marriages. At 35, he wed 16-year-old Lita Gray, embarking on a controversial journey that raised eyebrows even in the permissive circles of Hollywood. Their marriage was mired in scandal, with Gray alleging that she was coerced into matrimony due to her pregnancy with Chaplin's child. The marriage ultimately ended in a highly publicized divorce, amplifying the whispers surrounding Chaplin's romantic exploits. People found it difficult to reconcile the man he was in Hollywood to the man that was getting married to underage girls. In 1932, Chaplin found himself entangled with 22-year-old Paulette Goddard, who later revealed that she had initially misrepresented her age, claiming to be 17 when they first met. Despite the revelation, Chaplin pursued the relationship, culminating in marriage when Goddard was 26 and he was 47. Their union endured for 6 years, characterized by both moments of bliss and strain, emblematic of Chaplin's tumultuous romantic life. However, it was Chaplin's fourth and final marriage that garnered the most attention and controversy. At the age of 54, he wed 18-year-old Una O'Neill, the daughter of esteemed playwright Eugene O'Neill. This union, though met with incredulity and raised eyebrows, endured the test of time, remaining intact until Chaplin's passing. O'Neill's youthfulness and Chaplin's status as a renowned artist of his era magnified the intrigue surrounding their relationship. Chaplin's preference for younger women, coupled with the circumstances of his marriages, fueled speculation and gossip within the industry. While some viewed his actions as indicative of a romantic spirit unbound by societal norms, others condemned his behavior as exploitative and predatory. The allegations against Chaplin ranged from accusations of manipulation to outright abuse, with his choices seemingly confirming the suspicions harbored by his detractors. There were even rumors that he fled to a different country at a certain point in time in order to avoid certain statutory laws. It seemed like he couldn't help himself, but most people who heard about it were disappointed. They couldn't believe that such a respected man was involved in such. However, despite the condemnation he got from others, he didn't hide the fact that he preferred underage girls. She adopted her own child. Before he became a Hollywood star, it was said that Clark Gable was friends with some questionable people. Perhaps this was why he reached out to a fixer when he discovered that he got a young actress pregnant. What was done after that forever traumatized the child and made her grow up believing that she didn't have parents. If anyone was the epitome of Hollywood masculinity, it was Clark Gable. This charming, leading man-made heart swooned across the globe. He was the kind of guy you'd imagine tipping his hat as he sauntered into a room exuding confidence. And in 1934, he was smack dab in the middle of one heck of a scandal that involved a young actress named Loretta Young. She was a rising starlet with doe eyes and a smile that could light up the silver screen. At just 22, she was already making waves in Hollywood, capturing hearts with her talent and beauty. But little did anyone know she was about to become entangled in a scandalous affair with none other than the dashing Clark Gable. A 34-year-old Gable, already married, diving headfirst into a clandestine romance with the much younger Loretta Young. Their flirtation soon turned into a scandalous affair, and to complicate matters further, Young became pregnant. It was the kind of situation that could spell disaster for both their careers and reputations. Some reports claim that Gable actually forced himself on the actress and that the sexual activities between them were not consensual. When Clark Gable realized how messy the situation was, he reached out to the one person that could fix it, Eddie Mannix, a fixer with connections deep in the heart of Hollywood. He wasn't just any friend to Gable, he was the kind of friend who knew how to clean up messes, no matter how messy they were. Mannix's solution was as ingenious as it was morally dubious. He orchestrated a plan for Young to fake adopt her own child, effectively concealing the scandal of being an unwed mother. It was a move straight out of the Hollywood playbook. Young, determined to protect her child from judgment, went along with Mannix's plan, confiding only in the inner circles of Hollywood's elite. And so Judy, as she would later be named, grew up believing that Loretta Young adopted her. But as Judy grew older, the truth became harder to conceal. It was difficult to ignore the resemblance between Judy and Clark Gable. Soon enough, rumors began to spread, and people started asking questions. Years passed, but secrets have a way of coming to light. On Judy's wedding day, she confronted her mother, demanding to know the truth, and in a moment filled with emotions and regret, Young finally revealed the truth to her daughter. Judy herself later confirmed the truth in her autobiography, Uncommon Knowledge, laying bare the secrets that had been buried for so long. In the end, Eddie Mannix's solution may have spared his friend Clark Gable from immediate scandal, but it couldn't shield him from the consequences of his actions forever. This decision certainly did not spare Judy from the trauma of growing up without parents. Why Mary Nolan had 15 abdominal surgeries. If you have ever heard about Hollywood fixers, then the name Eddie Mannix certainly rings a bell. He was the one who was responsible for making most of MGM Studios' scandals disappear. Whenever something occurred and it could damage the image of the studio, he would go behind the scenes and clean up the mess before the public got to know about it. However, in July 1935, he was not doing someone else's dirty laundry. The scandal was right at his doorstep. His former lover had publicly accused him of maltreating her and ruining her life. He denied all the allegations, but when her friends and family began to speak up about what he did to her, things got a little complicated and he had to find a solution and find it fast. Mary Nolan, Mannix's ex-lover, was a well-known actress in the 1920s. Truth be told, life and career were marked by both successes and personal struggles. Nolan began her career as a Ziegfeld Follies showgirl before transitioning to silent films. She quickly gained attention for her striking beauty and talent on screen. Mary Nolan, initially performing under the name Imogen Robertson in Germany, began her film career there with Verborgene Gluten in 1925, followed by Die Feuertanzerin, which garnered her favorable reviews and a contract offer from Universum Film AG. She worked steadily in Germany until 1927, declining offers from Hollywood producers until Joseph M. Schenck of United Artists convinced her to return to the United States. Upon her return, Nolan faced scrutiny from the press and women's groups due to her past scandal, prompting United Artists to suggest a name change to Mary Nolan. She made 2 films with United Artists before joining Universal Pictures in August 1927, where she received good reviews for her role in Good Morning Judge. In the same year, she was said to have been involved in a relationship with Eddie Mannix, who allegedly used his connections to help boost her career. Mannix was married at the time, so they kept their affair a secret for as long as they could. Nolan's career received a significant boost when she was loaned to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer for West of Zanzibar in 1928, starring alongside Lon Chaney and Lionel Barrymore. The film was a hit, as was her subsequent loan to MGM for Desert Nights in 1929, opposite John Gilbert, further solidifying her status in Hollywood. However, Mannix and Nolan's affair ended abruptly in 1929. While no one knows for sure why the affair ended, it was said that the actress became an emotional wreck in the following years. Her career began to decline rapidly, and she was said to have displayed erratic behavior on sets. After a long battle with substance abuse and financial problems, her life was in shambles. It was clear that there was a lot of pain buried deep within her, but no one knew what was causing it.
It was in 1935 that Mary Nolan decided to open up about what she went through in the hands of Eddie Mannix. Initially, it seemed like a publicity stunt by a desperate actress, but as time went on, people began to see that her claims were not far-fetched from what others had accused Mannix of. According to her, she lived with him in the Ambassador Hotel from the year 1927 to 1931, and they were actively in an affair at the time. As time went on, he began to treat her badly and would even go as far as hitting her and inflicting wounds on her body. She also claimed that he was responsible for the decline of her career and that he allegedly used his influence to ruin her career at a certain point. However, the most shocking part of her story was on the day he attacked her and hit her abdominal area so badly that she had to be hospitalized. The damages he caused were so severe that she had to undergo over 15 surgeries in order to survive. After she sued him, he denied all she had said and claimed that she was using the story to gain fame and sympathy from the public. But despite his claims, Mary Nolan had a solid army of witnesses behind her. Her friends and family revealed he maltreated her during the time that they were together. He also allegedly forced her to terminate multiple pregnancies, and there were times when she had to go on set with bruises because of how badly he hit her. As expected, Mannix did everything in his power to bury the story. It was said that he sent a private detective to her house to threaten her, and this was what made her drop the lawsuit. While there was no concrete evidence, anyone who heard about Mannix's heinous crimes knew that there was at least an atom in Mary's story. In the end, Mannix won and was able to bury a story that could have potentially ruined his image and career.
Forget bad acting. That's easy to forgive. What these actors did behind closed doors, that's where the real horror stories live. And somehow, they still got standing ovations. Laurence Olivier's on-set bullying. He was already one of the biggest names in British acting when he signed on to direct and star in The Prince and the Showgirl, 1957. His co-star? Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's biggest export at the time. What should have been a dream pairing turned into a toxic disaster. Olivier made it clear from day one that he didn't respect Monroe. He mocked her acting style, called her unprofessional, and told crew members she was just a body, not an actress. According to accounts from the set, he hated her method acting process and refused to accommodate her needs. Monroe often struggled with anxiety and relied on her acting coach, Paula Strasberg, for support. Olivier banned Strasberg from the set and then mocked Monroe for falling apart. Tensions got so bad that Monroe would cry between takes. Crew members said Olivier humiliated her in front of others, rolling his eyes and whispering insults during her scenes. Colin Clark, an assistant on set, later wrote in his memoir that Olivier purposely made things harder for Monroe, knowing it would throw her off. He reportedly told one crew member, "All she has to do is be sexy. Why is that so difficult?" Olivier didn't hide his contempt. In interviews, he called her impossible and blamed her for production delays, even though Monroe was dealing with health issues and pressure from both studios. Her husband, Arthur Miller, who visited the set, later said Monroe was emotionally bullied by Olivier from start to finish. After filming ended, Monroe refused to ever work with him again. Olivier, for his part, wrote later that directing her was like trying to teach a pig to sing. That quote stuck, and not in a good way. There were no public consequences, but the stories survived, and they paint a very different picture of the so-called legend. Jerry Lewis's co-star harassment. He made his name as a comic genius, but behind the scenes, he was a nightmare for many of the women who worked with him. Several former colleagues have since spoken out, describing a long pattern of inappropriate behavior, emotional abuse, and control. In the 1950s, actress Karen Sharp was cast opposite Lewis in The Disorderly Orderly. She later said Lewis invited her to his office and made an inappropriate move that left her feeling cornered and unsafe. When she rejected him, he told her she'd never work again and followed through. She never did another major film. In her words, "He was abusive and cruel. If you said no, you were done." Hope Holliday, who worked with Lewis in The Ladies' Man, told a similar story. She said he cornered her in a dressing room and forced himself on her. She escaped, but the fear stuck with her for decades. She didn't speak publicly until after his death. These weren't isolated stories. In the 1960s and 70s, Lewis kept a tight grip on his sets, especially around female cast members. He would limit their screen time, speak down to them, and brag that he alone decided who stayed and who got cut. He often used sexual threats as leverage. Lewis also had a reputation for humiliating his co-stars. On more than one set, he would make actresses read lines in front of the full crew while he interrupted with vulgar jokes. If they didn't laugh, he'd replace them. One assistant recalled him saying, "If she can't take a joke, she can't be in my picture." Many of these stories didn't come out until after Lewis died in 2017. But once the curtain lifted, the pattern was hard to ignore. Decades of silence, intimidation, and quiet blacklisting, all hidden behind a goofy smile and slapstick gags. Rex Harrison's cruel cast behavior. He built his career playing charming, upper-class men. In real life, he was known for being cold, rude, and often cruel, especially to those who couldn't fight back. Directors, co-stars, and crew described him as arrogant, condescending, and openly hostile to anyone he didn't respect. In the 1950s, his behavior drew serious concern when actress Carol Landis passed away shortly after their relationship reportedly ended. Harrison was married at the time. Landis rumoredly left a note, which vanished before police arrived. Harrison was the last person to see her alive. While he wasn't charged, his studio rushed to bury the story. Landis's family and friends believed he pushed her aside after promising her a future. His next big scandal came during the Broadway run of My Fair Lady. Julie Andrews, who played Eliza Doolittle, kept things professional, but insiders said Harrison treated her like a servant. He demanded the spotlight, refused to rehearse with understudies, and insisted on top billing even when Andrews started stealing the show. Stagehands said he often refused to speak to her between scenes and mocked her singing voice. On film sets, Harrison's temper was just as nasty. During Dr. Dolittle, 1967, he regularly exploded at crew members and demanded constant rewrites to suit his mood. He got into shouting matches with the director and made racist remarks about extras hired for background scenes. The production went over budget largely because of his delays and demands. Despite his reputation, Harrison kept getting major roles. Studios looked the other way because he delivered strong performances. But to the people behind the scenes, he was a constant source of fear and stress. He won an Oscar. He got a knighthood. But off-screen, the people who worked with him knew the truth. Rex Harrison made life on set miserable for anyone who wasn't Rex Harrison. Walter Matthau's mean-spirited conduct. He had the face of a grump and the timing of a pro. On screen, he was lovable, curmudgeonly, and always good for a laugh. Off-screen, not so charming. Behind the scenes, Matthau was known for being loud, insulting, and often downright mean. Crew members from his early films said Matthau had no patience for people he considered beneath him. He swore constantly, belittled production assistants, and made extras cry more than once. Matthau also had a habit of insulting people in front of crowds. He'd mock wardrobe choices, mimic voices, and call out mistakes during live takes. It wasn't playful teasing, it was meant to embarrass. One stand-in said, "You learned fast or you got humiliated." That was the rule. He treated some co-stars with respect, but not all. If he didn't like someone, he'd make sure the whole set knew it. During Plaza Suite, insiders claimed he locked himself in his trailer for hours just to avoid a cast member he didn't get along with. Filming reportedly stopped until he decided to come out. No one dared challenge him. Even directors weren't safe. Matthau would argue about scripts, change lines on the spot, and storm off if he didn't like a scene. He once walked out in the middle of a rehearsal and told the director, "You don't know what the hell you're doing." None of this ever made the press. Studios kept it quiet because Matthau delivered hits, and fans only saw the grumpy charm he perfected on screen. The yelling, the insults, the tantrums, they stayed behind the camera. But ask anyone who worked on his sets for more than a week, and you'll hear the same thing. Walter Matthau wasn't acting like a jerk in his roles. He was just being himself. Dustin Hoffman's harassment era. For years, he was one of Hollywood's most respected actors. But in 2017, his name showed up in headlines for something else. Multiple women came forward with detailed accounts of harassment that dated back to the 1980s. The most widely reported story came from Anna Graham Hunter. She was just 17 when she interned on the set of the 1985 television adaptation of Death of a Salesman. In her account, Hoffman repeatedly made inappropriate comments, asked intrusive personal questions, and touched her in ways that crossed clear boundaries. She said she laughed it off at the time because she was scared and didn't know what else to do. "He was openly disrespectful," she wrote. "He did things you don't expect from a man twice your age and a star." Other women came forward with similar stories. Writer Wendy Riss said Hoffman propositioned her during a pitch meeting in the early 90s. When she declined, the meeting ended abruptly. A third woman, Catherine Rossiter, said Hoffman crossed physical boundaries with her regularly during their Broadway run of Death of a Salesman in 1983. She later said the trauma left her with years of anxiety. Hoffman responded to some of the allegations with vague statements, saying he respected women and didn't recall acting inappropriately. In other cases, he issued flat denials. But the number of women and the similarities in their stories made it hard to ignore. Before these reports, Hoffman had a clean public image. Serious actor, Oscar winner, family man. But the 2017 reckoning pulled back the curtain. The stories weren't anonymous. The women had names, faces, and nothing to gain by speaking out. He never faced formal charges, but his legacy now carries a stain. And for many of the people he worked with behind closed doors, that reputation was never spotless to begin with. Chevy Chase's racist, violent set behavior. By 2012, he was already a known headache in the industry. But things hit a new low on the set of Community. What started as minor tension turned into a full-blown disaster, with racism, violence, and offensive jokes all playing a part. It wasn't just one bad day. Chase regularly clashed with the show's creator, Dan Harmon, and took his frustration out on castmates. According to Donald Glover, who played Troy, Chase often made racist remarks between takes. One comment implied that Glover only got laughs because of his race. Glover didn't respond. He later said, "I saw it as Chevy trying to get under my skin, but I just wasn't having it." Joel McHale, who played the lead on the show, had his own issues with Chase. In an interview years later, McHale revealed that Chase injured him during a scene, pushing him too hard in a physical gag. He laughed it off at the time, but behind the scenes, the tension kept growing. Chase refused to rehearse, complained constantly, and walked off set when he didn't like the script. The worst came when Chase reportedly used a racial slur during a heated argument about his character's dialogue. Writers and producers were stunned. Chase later apologized, claiming he was trying to make a point about offensive writing. But no one was buying it. That incident marked the beginning of the end. Eventually, Harmon was fired after clashing with NBC leadership. Chase stayed on for another season but left before filming wrapped. The energy on set never fully recovered. Cast and crew said the atmosphere was toxic, largely because of Chase's behavior. This wasn't new. Long before Community, Chase had been called out for bullying and ego problems on Saturday Night Live, where he once slapped a fellow cast member backstage. But Community made the pattern undeniable and public. He didn't face any formal consequences. No lawsuits, no fines. But the damage was done. The charm had worn off. What was once seen as sharp wit started to look more like plain cruelty. And no one was laughing anymore. James Woods' underage allegations. He always had a sharp tongue and a long list of enemies. But in 2017, things turned serious. Actress Amber Tamblyn publicly accused him of trying to pick her up when she was just 16 years old. Tamblyn said she and a friend, also underage, were at a restaurant when Woods invited them to Las Vegas. When they mentioned their age, he allegedly said, "Even better." Tamblyn posted the story on Twitter after Woods mocked a gay coming-of-age film for featuring teen characters. She followed up with an open letter. "You were 60. I was 16. You knew better." Woods denied everything. He called the story a lie and claimed he'd never even met Tamblyn, but she stood by her account and said she had witnesses. Several other actresses chimed in, backing her tone even if not that specific story. The accusation struck a nerve because Woods had a long record of creepy behavior toward young women. Back in the early 2000s, Woods had a relationship with Ashley Madison, a woman 40 years younger than him. She was reportedly just 19 when they started dating. Years later, he was seen on red carpets with even younger dates, drawing raised eyebrows but little pushback from the industry at the time. Online, Woods didn't help his case. He became known for posting hateful, sometimes threatening tweets. In 2017, he tweeted an image attacking a gender non-conforming child and their parents. When called out, he doubled down. The backlash was fierce, but he refused to apologize. For years, he had been considered one of Hollywood's more intelligent, if difficult, actors. But his public behavior grew more aggressive, more political, and more disturbing as time went on. Studios started backing away. By the end of the 2010s, Woods wasn't just disliked, he was avoided. No formal charges were ever filed, but his name became shorthand for an aging actor who used fame as a shield for predatory behavior. And unlike his movies, real life didn't come with a script rewrite. The damage was done, and people were finally paying attention. Jared Leto's disturbing gifts. In 2016, Jared Leto's method acting crossed the line from committed to uncomfortable. While filming Suicide Squad, he stayed in character as the Joker, not just on camera, but off. What he did in the name of immersion left several cast and crew members disturbed. According to multiple co-stars, Leto sent out bizarre gifts to help everyone get into the mindset of a chaotic villain. These included adult items, strange props, and even a live rat reportedly delivered to Margot Robbie. Viola Davis confirmed that a pig carcass was sent to the cast during a rehearsal. Actor Adam Beach later said the crew was genuinely unsettled. During early interviews, Leto leaned into the reputation, saying he wanted to create an intense dynamic. But after the public started raising concerns, he changed his tune. He claimed many of the stories had been exaggerated and said it was all part of getting into character. Mostly fun and games, he called it. The people on set didn't seem to agree. It got to the point where Warner Brothers reportedly asked him to scale things back. Some cast members said they avoided interacting with him during production. What was meant to build tension for the role turned into real stress behind the scenes. This wasn't the only time Leto made headlines for off-screen behavior. Around the same period, complaints over workplace treatment were reportedly filed. And on social media, questions surfaced about his interactions with young fans, though no formal action was ever taken. In the end, Leto's version of the Joker barely appeared in the film, less than 10 minutes of screen time. But the off-camera stories stuck. Most of the cast has since spoken about it in cautious terms, some jokingly, others not at all. Leto says it was all in service of the role. But for the people on the receiving end, it didn't feel like performance. It felt personal, and not in a good way. For many involved, the most unsettling part of the experience had nothing to do with what ended up on screen. Gerard Depardieu's assault conviction. He was once one of France's most celebrated actors. By 2025, he was a convicted offender. His fall wasn't sudden. It followed years of accusations that had been ignored, buried, or brushed off. That changed when two women spoke up about what happened on a film set in 2021. The production was Les Volets Verts. According to court documents, Depardieu was accused of touching two women, a set decorator and an assistant director, during filming. The women reported that he touched them without consent during routine interactions. Their complaints led to a formal investigation. At trial, more than 20 women came forward with similar stories. Some dated back decades. They described a pattern. Depardieu would use his fame to cross boundaries, often in professional settings. The court focused on the two most recent cases, both of which were backed by witness statements and internal reports from the set. In May 2025, Depardieu was found guilty. He received an 18-month suspended sentence, was fined, and added to France's National Registry of Offenders. The ruling was historic. It was one of the few times a major European film star faced legal consequences for this kind of behavior. The verdict sparked a national conversation in France. Depardieu had long been seen as untouchable. He starred in over 200 films and was a cultural icon. Presidents praised him. He held dual citizenship. Even when allegations surfaced in earlier years, they were dismissed as tabloid gossip. But the tide shifted. The testimonies were consistent. The stories lined up. And the excuses wore thin. During the trial, Depardieu denied wrongdoing and showed little remorse. His legal team argued that he was being targeted for his fame. The court didn't agree. Since the conviction, several film festivals quietly removed his name from promotions. Some projects were shelved. His defenders grew quiet. The industry that once protected him finally took a step back. He hasn't apologized. He hasn't stepped away. But for the first time in his career, the consequences caught up to him, and the public stopped pretending they didn't know. Steven Seagal's serial accusations. He built his brand as the tough guy who never lost a fight. But for decades, women behind the scenes told a very different story. Starting in the early 1990s, a steady stream of accusations followed him from co-stars, assistants, and women who auditioned for him in private. In 1991, actress Rayanne Malone said she was invited to Seagal's office to read for a role. Instead, she claimed he made inappropriate advances and locked the door behind her. Another woman, Christine Keeve, told a similar story from the same period. Both women said the studio discouraged them from speaking out. That same year, Warner Brothers reportedly paid a six-figure settlement to resolve another complaint involving Seagal's behavior during casting. Details were never made public, but the incident was widely reported at the time and quietly buried. In 1996, Jenny McCarthy said she showed up for an audition and was asked to undress, even though the scene didn't call for it. She refused. He told her she'd never work for him again. Years later, Juliana Margulies said Seagal brought a weapon to a hotel room during a late-night script meeting. She left immediately. The pattern didn't stop. In 2018, Portia de Rossi came forward with her own story. During an audition, she said Seagal unzipped his pants mid-meeting. Her agent later told her not to worry. He does that to everyone. By 2020, more than a dozen women had shared similar experiences. Some described unwanted touching. Others said he used his role as producer or lead actor to lure them into uncomfortable situations. Still, Seagal denied all wrongdoing and avoided legal action in the United States. He later moved to Russia, accepted citizenship, and became close to President Vladimir Putin. Since then, he's appeared less in Hollywood and more in foreign state media. Critics called it an escape from accountability. Seagal hasn't faced criminal charges, but the sheer volume of consistent, detailed stories makes it hard to dismiss. For years, he played the unbeatable action hero on screen. But off-screen, the damage he left behind caught up to his legacy, even if not the law. What if the stars you admired most were the very people you should have been warned about? How many careers were built on behavior no one dared to question? Mabel Normand's scandalous spiral. She was one of the brightest stars of the silent film era. By the early 1920s, she was known across America as a comedy queen, often working alongside Charlie Chaplin and Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. Audiences adored her charm. Off-screen, though, her life was far less glamorous. In February 1922, Mabel was caught in the middle of Hollywood's first major murder mystery. Her close friend and mentor, director William Desmond Taylor, was found shot in his Los Angeles home. Normand had been with him just hours earlier. Witnesses placed her leaving his house that night. Newspapers turned her into a suspect by association. While police never charged her, the damage was done. Headlines linked her name to the crime, and gossip spread quickly. The scandal came at a time when Hollywood was already under fire. Arbuckle's trial over the death of Virginia Rappe was fresh in the public's mind. Now one of America's beloved actresses was tied to another lurid story. Mabel admitted she had struggled with drug use, and Taylor had tried to help her quit. Investigators found letters from her at his home, which made the public even more suspicious. Her troubles didn't stop there. In 1924, she faced another front-page scandal when millionaire oil heir Cortlandt S. Dines was shot with her own pistol. Her chauffeur, Horace Greer, pulled the trigger after what he claimed was an argument. Dines survived, but the press had a field day. Once again, Norman was at the center of violence, and once again, her reputation took the hit. By the mid-1920s, her career was collapsing. Studios hesitated to hire her, fearing bad publicity. The woman once called the Queen of Comedy now carried a shadow wherever she went. She kept working in smaller projects, but the scandals never left her name. Mabel Norman's decline came fast. Tuberculosis ended her life in 1930 at just 37 years old. Her obituaries remembered her talent, but they also recalled the string of scandals that destroyed her standing in Hollywood. To the public, she was no longer the innocent star from the screen. She was the actress whose life had been tangled in crime, controversy, and chaos. Erich von Stroheim's abusive direction. On Hollywood sets in the 1920s, actors feared one director more than most. Crews whispered about his temper, his endless demands, and his obsession with humiliating performers for the sake of realism. That director was Erich von Stroheim. He had built a reputation as a genius of early cinema, but his methods pushed both cast and crew to breaking points. During the filming of Foolish Wives in 1921, Stroheim spent millions recreating Monte Carlo down to the smallest detail. Universal executives panicked when the budget ballooned to a record-breaking $1 million. Behind the scenes, actors recalled his cruelty. He forced extras to stay on set for days in full costume, with little rest, just to capture tiny background shots. Stroheim also demanded humiliating performances. In Greed, 1924, he insisted that actors eat rotten food on camera to show genuine disgust. He filmed brutal fight scenes with little safety, letting actors injure each other rather than use stunt doubles. Actress Zasu Pitts later admitted she feared working with him because his intensity crossed the line from art into abuse. Executives grew tired of his antics. Foolish Wives was cut down by the studio after Stroheim's version stretched to over 6 hours. Greed was famously butchered from 9 hours to 2. Stroheim blamed the cuts on Hollywood's lack of vision, but many insiders said his reckless control was the real problem. By the late 1920s, his career as a director was nearly over. He had been fired multiple times, including from Merry Go Round in 1923. Colleagues claimed his ego and abusive behavior made him impossible to work with. Though he went on to act in films, his directing career was left in ruins. The public, however, didn't see the chaos behind the camera. They saw a brilliant director with a flair for detail and realism. Audiences admired his work without realizing the toll it took on the people trapped under his control. Lupe Velez' turbulent affairs. Hollywood tabloids in the 1930s thrived on scandal, and no actress drew more headlines than Lupe Velez. Nicknamed the Mexican Spitfire, she was celebrated on screen for her fiery energy, but her private life became a public circus. Born in Mexico in 1908, Velez came to Hollywood in the late 1920s and quickly won roles alongside stars like Douglas Fairbanks. Audiences loved her bold personality, and she often leaned into the stereotype of a hot-tempered Latina. That image followed her off-screen. Her romances and fights became just as famous as her films. Velez had a string of volatile relationships with men in the industry. Her brief marriage to Johnny Weissmuller, the Olympic swimmer turned Tarzan star, was plagued by explosive arguments. Neighbors reported shouting matches that sometimes ended with police called to their home. Before and after that, she was linked to Gary Cooper, Clark Gable, and other leading men, but nearly every relationship ended in conflict. The press fed on her unpredictable behavior. Reporters claimed she threw dishes at lovers, stormed out of parties, and even attacked rivals in public. One infamous incident involved her slapping actress Estelle Taylor at a nightclub, sparking front-page coverage the next morning. Each scandal added to her reputation as untamable, and Hollywood studios used the attention to market her films. But behind the headlines, Velez struggled with mental health and the pressures of a career that often reduced her to caricature roles. As the 1940s began, her star was fading. She grew frustrated with the limited parts offered to her, feeling trapped between being typecast or being forgotten. Her personal life only added to the turmoil. In 1944, Velez discovered she was pregnant after a brief relationship with actor Harold Maresh. Unmarried and facing backlash from both the press and her Catholic family, she felt cornered. That December, she ended her life in Los Angeles at just 36 years old. The note she left behind expressed despair but also pride in living life on her own terms. Gene Eagle's substance-fueled chaos. Broadway audiences once called her unforgettable. Gene Eagles brought raw emotion to the stage and later to film, but her talent was matched by a reputation for reckless behavior. By the late 1920s, her name was linked less with artistry and more with chaos. Eagles began in touring theater companies before breaking through on Broadway in the early 1920s. Critics praised her intensity in plays like Rain, where she played a prostitute seeking redemption. She was hailed as one of the most gifted performers of her time, but even then stories circulated about her unpredictable lifestyle. Alcohol and drugs fueled many of her problems. Colleagues described her arriving late to rehearsals or missing shows entirely. When she did appear, she could be brilliant, but there was no consistency. Managers grew frustrated with her disappearing acts. The press covered these incidents relentlessly, painting her as both a genius and a liability. Her leap to Hollywood only added to the turmoil. In films like The Letter, 1929, she showed the same dramatic power that made her a Broadway legend. But off-screen, her habits spiraled. Reports describe her lashing out at co-stars, storming off sets, and clashing with studio heads. She was once suspended by the Actors' Equity Association for walking away from contracts, making her the first star ever banned by the union. Friends later admitted she struggled with morphine dependency, which was sometimes prescribed at the time for pain but quickly became addictive. Combined with alcohol, it created a pattern of erratic behavior that worsened as her fame grew. On the 3rd of October, 1929, Gene Eagles died suddenly in New York at only 39 years old. The official cause was listed as an overdose of chloral hydrate. Newspapers framed it as the tragic end of a star who had burned too bright too fast. Her funeral drew thousands of fans, a final reminder of the power she held on stage. Yet the obituaries couldn't separate her talent from her scandals. Hollywood remembered her as much for the missed performances in drug-fueled chaos as for her unforgettable roles. George C. Scott's violent drunken rages. Long before winning an Academy Award for Patton in 1970, George C. Scott had already built a troubling reputation off-screen. His powerful presence carried into his personal life, where alcohol and violence often dominated the story. Scott's career began in theater during the 1940s, but as his fame grew through the 1950s and 1960s, stories about his behavior circulated among colleagues. He was widely known as a heavy drinker. Friends and former partners later admitted that his drunken outbursts were more frightening than theatrical. His marriage to actress Colleen Dewhurst exposed the worst of it. Dewhurst, who married Scott twice, once described life with him as unpredictable and unsafe. In interviews years later, she explained that he could be loving one moment and physically violent the next. Their volatile relationship became part of his legend in Hollywood, as directors and fellow actors whispered about the dangers of working with him during binges. Scott's temper wasn't limited to his home. During productions, he would explode at cast and crew. Accounts describe him storming off sets, threatening physical fights, and refusing to work unless his demands were met. Directors tolerated it because of his undeniable talent, but many admitted privately that he was among the most difficult stars to control. Even his relationship with awards revealed his disdainful streak. When he won the Academy Award for Best Actor for Patton, he refused to attend the ceremony. He dismissed the Oscars as a meat parade, a comment that further fueled his image as both rebellious and abrasive. But behind the public defiance was a darker reality. Alcohol abuse shaped most of his personal life, leaving scars on those around him. His children later acknowledged the struggles at home, with Scott's behavior leaving a mark long after the cameras were off. Despite repeated attempts to manage his drinking, Scott's battles with alcohol continued until his death in 1999 at the age of 71. Tippi Hedren's Hitchcock Nightmare. The set of The Birds looked like a triumph of movie magic. Behind the scenes, though, the production became one of the most disturbing examples of a director crossing the line. Alfred Hitchcock's treatment of actress Tippi Hedren turned what should have been a career highlight into years of trauma. Hedren was a former model when Hitchcock cast her in The Birds, 1963. To the public, it seemed like a dream debut, but privately, she described how the director became controlling and obsessive. He dictated her movements, isolated her from colleagues, and monitored her every decision. The most shocking moment came during the film's attic sequence. Hedren was told mechanical birds would be used for the attack. Instead, she arrived on set to find real birds tied to her costume. For 5 straight days, she endured takes where birds scratched her face and pecked at her skin. She later said she collapsed in exhaustion and fear after the ordeal. Hitchcock refused to stop until he got the footage he wanted. Her struggles didn't end there. On the set of Marnie, 1964, Hitchcock's fixation with her deepened. Hedren recalled how he made unwanted advances and threatened to ruin her career when she rejected him. True to his word, after she finished her contract, he refused to release her to work for other studios. It effectively stalled her rise in Hollywood. Hedren spoke publicly about these experiences decades later, long after Hitchcock had been celebrated as a master filmmaker. Her accounts were supported by crew members who witnessed the bird attack and her isolation on set. While Hitchcock's films remain iconic, the stories from Hedren revealed the disturbing cost of his vision. The public reaction was divided at first, with some critics reluctant to tarnish Hitchcock's reputation. But Hedren's testimony, repeated consistently over the years, became an essential part of his history. It showed how a director once admired for brilliance could also be responsible for deliberate cruelty. Hedren survived the ordeal, but the scars on her career were permanent. She never became the Hollywood star Hitchcock once promised, largely because he made sure she couldn't. Maria Schneider's on-set violation. Filmgoers in 1972 walked into theaters expecting a daring love story. What they saw in Last Tango in Paris became one of cinema's most infamous scandals, but the darkest truth didn't come out until decades later. At the center of it all was one 9-year-old actress, Maria Schneider. Schneider had been cast opposite Marlon Brando, who was 48 at the time. Director Bernardo Bertolucci wanted realism, but what unfolded crossed every line of consent. In a 2013 interview, Schneider revealed that a disturbing scene involving Brando and a stick of butter had never been discussed with her beforehand. She said both Brando and Bertolucci conspired to spring it on her during filming. The goal, according to Bertolucci, was to capture her genuine humiliation. On screen, the moment shocked audiences. Off-screen, Schneider was devastated. She later explained, "I felt a little raped, both by Marlon and by Bertolucci. The raw fear and tears seen in the movie were not acting. They were the reaction of a teenager betrayed on set." For years, Schneider struggled under the weight of the experience. The international press labeled her a sex symbol, while she privately battled depression and substance use. In interviews, she admitted the scene haunted her, leaving scars that shaped the rest of her life. Bertolucci admitted in 2016 that he had kept the plan secret from Schneider to ensure her reaction was real. His words confirmed what she had said all along. The confession reignited outrage. Critics, actors, and audiences condemned the director for treating a young woman as a prop for shock value. Schneider worked in films through the 1970s and 1980s, but she never escaped the shadow of Last Tango in Paris. The The scandal followed her in every interview, every headline. Her talent was reduced to the trauma she endured on that set. She died in 2011 at just 58 years old, remembered both for her striking performances and for the exploitation that defined her most famous role. O.J. Simpson's hidden violence. Before the infamous 1995 trial that turned him into a national obsession, O.J. Simpson was already celebrated as a rare crossover star. He had been a football legend, a commentator, and even a Hollywood actor, appearing in comedies like The Naked Gun. The image was polished. Behind closed doors, though, police records and personal accounts told a much darker story. Nicole Brown Simpson, who married O.J. in 1985, had documented years of abuse. Friends recalled her bruises, her whispered fears, and her pleas for help. Police were called to their Brentwood home multiple times throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s. Reports described broken furniture, Nicole left shaken, and O.J. often dismissing the officers who responded. In 1989, the violence became public when O.J. pleaded no contest to spousal abuse. He was sentenced to probation, community service, and ordered to attend counseling. Despite the court record, he continued to maintain his public image as a charming celebrity. Hollywood roles and endorsements kept coming, while the darker reality remained mostly out of sight. Nicole's diaries, later entered into evidence, revealed how severe the abuse had been. She wrote about being followed, screamed at, and physically attacked. In one entry, she described O.J. breaking down a door during an argument. These writings, combined with years of police documentation, painted a picture very different from the friendly face audiences knew from television and film. Even after she separated from him in 1992, the harassment continued. Friends testified that Nicole lived in constant fear. One told reporters she kept photos of her injuries as protection in case she needed evidence. When Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman were killed in 1994, the spotlight shifted fully to O.J. The trial exposed the long history of abuse to the entire world. Although Simpson was acquitted in criminal court, the civil trial later found him liable for wrongful death. The contrast between his Hollywood image and the private record of violence stunned many who had admired him. To the public, he had been a sports hero turned movie star, but the evidence showed a pattern of control, intimidation, and repeated harm that had been hidden for years. Kirstie Alley's cult devotion. Fans of the sitcom Cheers saw her as the sharp and funny Rebecca Howe. Away from the cameras, though, Kirstie Alley's life was deeply tied to the Church of Scientology. Her devotion to the controversial group shaped both her career and her public reputation. Alley joined Scientology in 1979 after struggling with cocaine addiction. She credited the group's rehabilitation program, Narconon, with helping her get sober. From that point on, she became one of Scientology's most visible celebrity supporters. Records later showed she donated millions of dollars to the church, securing its top patron status. Her loyalty often spilled into her professional life. Colleagues reported that she pushed Scientology's methods on set, promoting its programs to co-stars. Those who criticized the church found themselves at odds with her. Actress Leah Remini, who famously left Scientology, recalled that Alley attacked her publicly for speaking out. Alley's public outbursts also drew attention. In the early 2000s, she clashed with journalists who questioned the church's practices. On social media, she went after critics with aggressive posts, defending Scientology at every turn. Former associates described her as fiercely protective of the group, sometimes at the expense of personal relationships. Her career began to slip by the late 1990s, but Alley remained in the headlines more for her ties to Scientology than for her work. Reports claim she contributed to campaigns against psychiatry, a core target of the church. Her donations were so extensive that Scientology leaders often highlighted her as proof of celebrity commitment. The backlash grew louder after allegations against the church became public. Defectors accused Scientology of abusive practices, financial exploitation, and intimidation. Alley dismissed those claims, insisting that the organization had saved her life. To many former fans, her defense of the church felt like complicity. Even in her final years, Alley refused to distance herself from Scientology. Interviews showed her praising its programs while dismissing the criticisms that surrounded it. When she passed away in 2022, obituaries noted her long career but also pointed to her deep involvement with one of Hollywood's most controversial institutions. Jared Padalecki's violent outbursts. In 2019, headlines out of Austin, Texas shocked fans of Supernatural. Jared Padalecki, long admired for his role as Sam Winchester, was arrested outside his own nightclub after a violent altercation. The story clashed with his carefully built image as a friendly, wholesome star. Police reports showed that Padalecki got into a confrontation at Stereotype, a lounge he co-owned. Witnesses claimed he struck a bartender and then assaulted the general manager when they tried to intervene. Security footage reportedly backed up those accounts. When officers arrived, Padalecki was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of assault and 1 count of public intoxication. The arrest stunned his fan base. For years, he had cultivated a reputation as approachable and kind, often engaging warmly at conventions and public events. The mugshot and reports of violence told a different story. Even local news outlets in Austin, used to covering nightlife dust-ups, treated the incident as a major shock given Padalecki's celebrity status. Insiders later said this wasn't his first outburst. Staff at the club had dealt with his temper before, though those incidents never made it beyond whispers. The 2019 arrest, however, brought everything into the open. After spending a short time in jail, Padalecki was released on bond. He later issued a statement thanking fans for their support but avoided discussing the details of the charges. The case was eventually resolved quietly, but the incident remained attached to his name. The contrast was hard to ignore. On television, Padalecki played a heroic character who embodied loyalty and moral strength. Off-screen, he had been caught on camera lashing out violently at employees of his own business. For some fans, the arrest marked a turning point in how they saw him. Despite the scandal, Padalecki's career continued. He reprised his role in Supernatural's final season and later starred in Walker.